It's a comfortable chair, but it's...
Yeah, if it squeaks, because I probably won't sit still.
This is Dawn Bruce, a member of my congregation. Dawn has a very regal stature with a glowing disposition. Whenever she walks into a room, it is not uncommon for every eye to take note of her presence.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about growing up in the early part of your life. What was that like for you?
It was strange and uncomfortable all at the same time because my mom was really strict, but then I have a loving and praying grandmother who kept us in the church. The church we grew up on was right across the street from where we lived at. So I was a very active part of the church until I got pregnant. And then things just kind of went south from there. I didn't tell anyone at the church. They just saw it. So when they started seeing me progress, then they will come to me sporadically one by one. What's going on with you? Are you okay? Are you sick? What's the problem? And I was like, there's no problem. I'm pregnant. Well, we have to go take this up with the pastor because we have to figure out if this is the right place for you. What do you mean if this is the right place for me? This is the best place for me. I'm in the Lord's house. I don't understand. What do you mean it's the right place for me? We just think that you have the devil in you and you're carrying a devil spawn because you're too young, you're not married, and you're in our church and we don't like your kind.
My name is Alex Lang, and you are listening to Restorative Faith, my podcast for those who question and doubt. The goal of this podcast is to recast Christianity in a new light. Nothing is off limits. Nothing is too sacred to be touched. We are going to break down the Christian faith one piece at a time and rebuild it into something that is actually worth believing. This season is about evil and its role in driving people away from the church. Again, because we are talking about issues pertaining to evil in the world, there are some things we will be discussing in this episode that may not be appropriate for younger listeners. In our first episode, we discussed the Christian belief that humans are inherently evil because we all descend from Adam and Eve. However, the idea that humans are born with Adam's corrupted soul is just one way that Christians attempt to explain the presence of evil in the world. There's a whole other side to Christianity that attempts to account for the evil we experience, but in a completely different way. I'm of course talking about the evil that comes from the spiritual realm. According to Christianity, there is a whole world of beings that we can't see who have the ability to influence our lives for good and for evil. These beings are known as angels and demons. Angels are overseen by God and work for good in the world, whereas demons are overseen by the devil or Satan and work towards the destruction of the world. And as you heard earlier, when Dawn got pregnant, the response from her congregation was that she had been influenced by the devil. In fact, they told her that she was literally carrying the devil's child. Again, Dawn Bruce.
I felt like because I was 14 and I was having sex that I was really carrying the devil's baby because my life wasn't supposed to be that way. I was the one out of my mother's children. I've always been labeled a good kid because I wasn't a bad kid. My sister got whoopings all the time. My brothers got whoopings all the time. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. I was the one. I was in the house. I did my homework. I cleaned up. Whatever you're supposed to do, I did it. So I was a good kid. So for me to actually be having sex and then got pregnant. I got pregnant the very first time I had sex. I graduated 8th grade, got pregnant, and had a baby all in the same year. So it was like, oh, so now you're a disgrace because you're supposed to be the prodigy golden child, and look at you. You're just going to turn out to be nothing. So that's what I started to hear. So I was like, well, if I'm really going to be nothing, maybe this is the devil's child for real. So maybe I should just suck it up and just know that this is what my life is going to be like.
Now, the reason why the members of her childhood congregation believed that Dawn had been influenced by the devil is because this type of thinking is very much in the Bible. In the New Testament, you will find a plethora of references to angels and demons. For instance, in the Gospel of Luke, the angel Gabriel delivers a message to Mary that she is pregnant with Jesus. Another example, on the evil side of the spectrum, is found in Mark's Gospel. Jesus removes a demon from a boy who suffers from epilepsy. According to the story, the demon often tried to kill the boy by making him fall into fire or water. Clearly, these stories are rooted in ancient modalities, ancient ways of perceiving and understanding the world. It was very common for people in the ancient world to have experiences of angels approaching them in visions or dreams with important messages from God. So too was it common to attribute illness and disease to demons inhabiting our bodies. When you don't have a 21st century scientific understanding of epilepsy and how it affects the brain, then demons are your next best bet. But if you read the Bible closely, you'll notice there's a distinct difference between the Old and the New Testament, particularly when it comes to angels and demons. The Old Testament has a number of references to angels, but not one reference to demons or the devil. But then when you get to the New Testament, all of a sudden, there's demons and devils everywhere. So I've always wondered what happened between the writing of the Old Testament and the writing of the New Testament, because clearly something has dramatically changed in the way that these people see the world. For insight into this shift, I spoke with Dr. Donald Kaasch, a retired international opera star turned historian with a penchant for ancient Near East history. He has one word to describe what happened: dualism.
Dualism at its simplest is really yin and yang, the opposing forces that create balance. In a sense, they both support each other. The two components in dualism really are equal to one another.
Dualism is this spiritual idea that there are opposing forces of good and evil in the universe that are always battling against one another for dominance. But what Dr. Kaasch explained is that this dualism was not originally part of Judaism. It became part of Judaism because of the influence of another religion, Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism is this library of writings supposedly by someone named Zoroaster. As we understand it historically, it is a name that's given to this religion, and it is a name that's given to the writings of the Avesta. It really takes its own life around, well, with the dominance of Cyrus the Great, ultimately around 540 BCE and the destruction of Babylon.
This is where things get a little bit complicated. But basically, what happens is the Jewish people are overtaken and enslaved by a nation known as Babylon. This enslavement lasts for about 50 years, until Babylon is overtaken by another superpower known as the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was ruled by a man named Cyrus the Great. There are two things you need to know about Cyrus. First, he frees the Jewish people and allows them to return to their homeland in Judea. Second, he also happened to be a follower of Zoroastrianism. The Jewish people were so grateful to King Cyrus for allowing them to return back to Jerusalem that the religion of Zoroastrianism rubbed off on them. One of the things that the Jewish people started believing in as a result of the influence of Zoroastrianism is the idea that the forces of light and darkness are constantly battling with one another for dominance. Here's Dr. Kaasch explaining how the followers of Zoroastrianism view God working in the world.
The supreme being, very remote and removed, his name is Zarvan Akarana, and he has two aspects beneath him that is our yin and yang, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. Ahura Mazda being that of light, of truth, of honor, of goodness, of life. And the Angra Mainyu being the opposite of that, this yang, okay? That of darkness, that of especially of violence.
The forces of darkness and violence are always hungry to consume the forces of light and goodness. According to the scriptures of Zoroastrianism, these dark forces will eventually go to war to destroy and eliminate the forces of light, resulting in a cosmic showdown where the armies of darkness and the armies of light are locked in battle for ultimate control of the universe.
Can we see all of this happening?
thinking?
No,
Or is this all-
no.
So can you explain?
These are not visible beings. They're not visible beings at this level. That there's armies of the cherubim, where we get cherubims, right? Angels of light and darkness, and demonim. Demonim are the demons, the dark servants of Angra Mainyu, of darkness, okay? These are like massive legions of these invisible beings, all vying to aid their dark overlord or their light overlord in this. I mean, it sounds like it sounds like a Lord of the Rings thing or worse.
Did you just catch that? Zoroastrianism is where the idea of cherubim and demons come from. It did not originate in Judaism. Interestingly, this concept of cherubim does make it into the Old Testament, but they're different from how you've always imagined them.
Right, and here's the problem with cherubim, is that in our medieval and Renaissance artwork, they're little fat babies with little wings. Oh, no. These are very much these Persian, Assyrian, Babylonian, this whole group of these winged bulls with a figure of a well-bearded man at the head, but it's these big bulls. That's what a cherubim is.
Now, it would take a while for the concept of the devil and demons to become part of the Jewish faith. But by the time we get to Jesus and the writing of the New Testament in the first century, things had changed considerably. Dualistic thinking was now completely a part of the Jewish mindset, meaning that the belief in angels and demons was now the norm. Of course, what most people don't realize is that the influence of dualism has an impact on the way God works in the world.
It is important to remember that God not only created Jesus, but in Christianity created the devil as well. And it is because God wants them in the world. The devil didn't create itself. We don't like to attribute that to God, but this is dualism in Christianity.
But all of this raises a really important question. Given that this is an ancient way of understanding the world, do people today still believe that angels and demons are influencing their lives? My colleague Rebecca Anderson went out on the street and randomly asked some people their thoughts on whether or not they believe in angels and demons.
I would lean towards yes.
Yes. My initial reaction is just to not believe in angels.
Yeah, I believe in angels because I feel like in the New Testament we see a lot of examples of angels, such as when Jesus was in the wilderness and the angels attended to him.
Not really, no.
No?
No. I didn't grow up very religious or like superstitious, so I just never had a reason to believe.
I tend to be an optimist, so maybe an angel could help me someday, but I don't want to believe in demons. So I just choose not to.
Not really, although I believe there are certain individuals in your life who you may later come back and consider to be angels in hindsight.
Do you believe in demons?
No.
I believe there is some sort of like positive energy out there. I again don't believe that it necessarily may be in the form of an angel, but I believe there probably is some sort of positive entity that always like watches you or looks after you. I feel like a lot of times I'll smell like my deceased relatives, like the smell of their house, and like I know they're with me. That's just something that like comforts me. So I feel like it's more of like an internal belief than like an actual like real life thing.
In general, I would say that I don't believe, like rationally, I would think that I don't believe in angels or demons or anything like that. However, even though that's kind of like the rational answer that I have, when it comes to little things that happen in life, every once in a while I think, I wonder, like for example, my grandmother that passed away not too long ago, when something really good happens or I feel like something reminds me of her, I feel like, maybe it's like her little angel that's like watching. So I think like actually deep down, that's why I had to think about it for a second, that I do believe that they could exist, but if you just ask me the question very and if I answer rationally, I would probably say that I don't believe.
If you believe that these beings exist, then they can be used to explain things that seemingly lack an explanation. As a pastor, I hear people in my congregation talk like this all the time. A good example would be when someone's in a car accident where the car is totally destroyed, but the driver walks away with barely a scratch. In the absence of any plausible explanation for how that could have happened, their go-to reasoning for why their loved ones survived is because God was protecting them with a guardian angel. On the other hand, when something really bad happens to a member of our congregation, I will sometimes hear my parishioners talk about evil forces. This is particularly true when a member of their family has become addicted to substances like drugs and alcohol. Unable to comprehend how their loved one could have fallen into the iron grip of addiction, their go-to reasoning for why their loved one can't break their bad habit is because a demon or an evil spirit is controlling their mind. Here is Dawn Bruce talking about her own struggles with addiction.
Me drinking was a way for me to not feel anything. So I would just constantly drink. And it wasn't even heavy drinking. Like I wasn't drinking like fifths of vodka and stuff like that. I would drink like 12 packs of beer at one time and just like pass out. But to me, I know who in their right mind at 25 drinks a 12 pack of beer by themselves. So I know it wasn't right, but it's not a spirit possessing me like, come to me. It's kind of like people that smoke. They have that craving for a cigarette. And the commercials out there now have a spirit saying, I'm your cigarette guy, come get it. I don't believe that. It's ludicrous to me because you just need to be ready for yourself to get help.
Like Dawn, I believe these spiritual explanations, although they make us feel better, are simply crutches that help us wrap our minds around things that we have trouble understanding. The likely reason why your son didn't die in that car accident is because car manufacturers have had to meet an ever-increasing level of safety standards to prevent deaths from collisions. Beginning with the seatbelt in 1968, cars have gotten a lot safer over the last 50 years. And the reason why your daughter is unable to break her addiction to heroin is because opioids change the chemistry of our brains so that we crave them in the same way that we crave food. When you go without food for a long enough period of time, you feel like you're going to die. That's exactly what a heroin user feels like when they are going through withdrawal. All this to say, I don't think angels and demons are able to influence the outcomes of what we experience in the world. There are two reasons why I believe this to be true. The first reason comes down to a performative contradiction. What many Christians fail to recognize is how the existence of beings like demons and devils reflect on God. If God is really all-powerful and all-good, then what does it say about God that God allows a being like a demon or the devil to win at all? If God is able to change the outcome of our world as Christians claim, then it seems kind of ridiculous and callous on God's part to allow the devil to ruin so many good lives. According to the Bible, God is way more powerful than any of these evil forces. So why wouldn't God just stop the devil? In fact, why give the devil and his henchmen any latitude to exist at all? If God is responsible for the creation of everything in the universe, it stands to reason that if they're really that bad, wouldn't God just wipe them out? But this logic leads me to the second reason why I don't think angels and demons are able to influence the outcomes of what we experience in the world. I don't think angels and demons are real. The reason why I don't think they are real is because they lead to crazy conclusions about our understanding of how God views what happens in our lives.
You're not born this way. Something's not right with you because the Lord doesn't agree with you having same sexual relations. We have some type of spirit inside of us, and we need to go away to these camps so we could have these exorcisms to get these evil spirits out of us, because you're not born that way. It's something that you choose. Well, how would you know? I was born this way, and I know that because I can clearly remember being in a diaper and looking at little girls, and I can remember that like it was yesterday. So I believe you either got it or you don't, because there's nothing wrong with me. And you could think I have all kind of demons, but later on in life, I felt that my demons inside of me, I did feel like I had demons inside of me, but I felt like my demons were anger, not for real demon. I just felt like I was so enraged from all these people coming at me from every which way about my sexuality, my lifestyle, me having children, because at this point I've had maybe 2 more kids by now. I'm still in my early 20s. My last 3 came back to back to back. I was pregnant for 3 years. So I got ridiculed about that. Oh my God, you're pregnant for 3 years straight. Well, you try being locked up in the basement and see how you could get away from not being pregnant for 3 years straight and see how you do.
Yeah, you heard that right. Locked in a basement. We're going to get back to that in a minute. But first, let's close out our discussion on this whole angels and demons thing. The idea that good and evil are caused by invisible beings that are in some eternal war with each other simply makes no sense to the modern rational mind. And yet Christians offer this as an actual explanation for why things happen all the time. Personally, I think the reason why these beliefs are perpetuated within the Christian faith is because it allows us to ignore the reality that is staring us in the face. Much of what we experience in life is determined by random chance. No intervention, no angels, no demons. That's really hard for us to stomach because it makes our lives feel so completely and utterly meaningless. Whereas if there's angels and demons operating behind the scenes, then at least I have an explanation for why my son was saved in that car crash or why my daughter died from a heroin overdose. It helps bring meaning to the randomness of life and explain away the choices that we make. When it comes down to it, I think the reason why Christians cling to the belief in angels and demons is because it simply makes them feel better. You heard this during Rebecca's interviews. It feels better to believe that angels or your loved ones are watching over you. It feels better to believe that an angel spared my son for a reason, or that a demon is responsible for taking my daughter's life. Because frankly, these things feel out of my control. But just because it feels better doesn't mean that it's true. And more importantly, this type of thinking can be very damaging because it abdicates our responsibility for our role in causing good and evil in the world.
So I met him in the military. He was actually a big drug lord as well. I didn't know this in the beginning, and he ran part of the south side of Chicago. I, on the other hand, didn't know nothing about that part. I just knew he was a fellow soldier. So that's the only life of him that I knew. And that's what attracted me to him. Because at that point, I was all about my military life. And I just hung out with soldiers. And he was very nice to me. So we were dating, so to speak. And he saw another soldier talking to me. And he asked, could he see me? And I said, well, sure. And he pulled me into this little boiler room. And he took my arm and he twisted it behind my back. And he smacked me. And I had never had nobody that I was dating hit me before. And fraternization was a big thing. We wasn't supposed to date each other in the same company. So I couldn't tell because I didn't want to mark on my military career. So I didn't tell anybody. At this point, I had one baby. And then I find out I'm pregnant. I tell him I don't want to keep the baby. Nobody knows this, but I had a potential career with the FBI. He's like, no, keep the baby. We're going to be good. We're going to be a family. So because of him, I turned it down and I just kept the baby. I literally felt like I was living with the devil. He was the epitome of the devil. And I felt like his whole family was the devil because his dad beat his mama all the time. He had a sister. The sister's boyfriend beat on her. All of his brothers beat their girlfriends. I went to his mom for help, and his mother told me I need to embrace the fact that I had a man who loved me enough to beat me. I knew it was wrong to stay, But he had me so brainwashed that I was too scared to leave and too scared to stay. Because anytime I left, he was like, if you don't come back, I'm going to kill your family. So what was supposed to have been going on was we were moving together in his mother's basement. So it was supposed to be our apartment in the basement. And he left out one day and said, hey, I'm going to get you something to eat and I'll be back. He never came back. So I tried to go upstairs and get out. And when I went upstairs, the inside, he took the doorknob off. So I couldn't get out. So I was just stuck in the basement. So anytime I heard anybody walking above me, I will holler out and say, hey, who's up there? Open the door. And they're like, no, you got to wait for Floyd. He has to come let you out. I'm like, but I'm hungry. I have to use the bathroom. It's cold down here. We're sorry. So his whole family contributed to me being locked in the basement. He said, here's a bucket. That's what you use to use the bathroom. I said, but I need to wash up. I'm dirty. Oh, here's a basin. And here's some water and here's a towel. And the basin didn't get clean, like a little dish pan thingy. He'll put water in it. And I would just have to reuse the same dirty water. And he'll feed me when he wanted to. And that went on for 2 years. How I got out of that is Leslie and Sheila. Those are my military buddies. They did a wellness check. Prior to them 2 years, I was so far gone with him that nobody wanted to be bothered with me. Because it was like, he's just going to beat you up. You're just going to go back again. So, we're just done with you. But nobody had heard from me in months. So they came over there. None of the adults were home. It was just at this point, the grandchildren. The grandchildren let them in. I heard their voices. I started screaming. They unlocked the basement door. And they helped me escape. And that's how I got out. I believe people manifest themselves into what we believe the devil is, because most people believe the devil is just a bundle of hatred and mean and just heinous. So that whole family is a manifestation in my mind of the devil.
We are the angels and we are the demons. We are the ones who create the good and evil that we experience in the world. I don't believe in angels and demons, but I do believe that God gives every human being a choice. Sometimes we make choices for good. Other times we make choices that hurt ourselves and the people around us. Sometimes our choices collide with elements of random chance, and other times our choices collide with each other. But no matter how you slice it, those choices are yours. And neither God, nor angels, nor demons are going to change what you decide to do. God has given you all the power. The question is, are you going to use that power to hurt the people around you, or change the world for the better? That's for next time on Restorative Faith. A big thank you to Dawn Bruce for her willingness to share her story so openly and honestly. I also want to thank Dr. Donald Kaasch for talking about the history of Zoroastrianism. Restorative Faith is a collaboration between myself and Rebecca Anderson, currently a student at Princeton Theological Seminary. The music in this episode was written by DP Music, Roman Cano, Michael Musco, Brian Holmes, Eaton Epstein, and Audio Flame. For more information on this and other episodes, please visit us at restorativefaith.org. What would your message be to those people if they were listening to you and they could hear you right now? As somebody who's gotten through so much and they might be in the middle of all that.
Never give up. Never, never give up. No matter how bad it gets, how low you feel, there's always a light. You won't see it right then, but if you continue to strive, I promise you, you will find your light. Never gives up. Because somebody out there, you will find somebody who eventually will care enough about you to love you enough, to help you get the strength to love yourself enough so you can rise above your own. Because the only person that could get you out of what you're in is you. No matter how much support you have to want to rise above.
Next time on Restorative Faith.
About 9 months after we were born, my mom ended her life. She was dealing with pretty severe postpartum depression. My dad was apparently very open with us at a younger age about that. So we knew that, right? We had that information.
You knew that part.
Yes.
Like, not just that she died, but
she went to the gun case, and like, I feel like I knew that pretty early, which is kind of crazy.
And then until they unravel, like talking about how they grew up and those dynamics and really get all this awareness of what childhood was like for them, can they start to connect the dots?
If we're hearing a verse from the Bible that sounds like God wants to punish us, let's also find the verse from the Hebrew Bible where God offers words of comfort, because perhaps God doesn't want our suffering. Perhaps instead God wants our care.